Poverty should be defined as the lack of adequate resources in addition to the lack of central capabilities as defined by Martha Nussbaum in Creating Capabilities, the Human Development Approach. Poverty should be measured according to an improved version of the Supplemental Poverty Measure, or SPM, and a capabilities threshold based on Nussbaum's 10 basic capabilities. While we understand that capabilities, or lack of, hold the root issues in poverty, we also recognize the need for a resource-based measurement for policy reasons, and that society also comprehends a less complicated measurement more easily, which is why the SPM is still needed. However, today, poverty is actually measured according to a quantitative data only based on resources. The official poverty measure, or OPM, is the main reference to whether or not someone is living in poverty. The SPM is also referenced as another valid poverty threshold. If a family unit falls below one or both of these thresholds, they would be considered living in poverty.
The official poverty measure functions by setting a poverty threshold, indicated by a number, that determines if the household lives in poverty or not. The threshold is calculated by taking the amount a family spends on food, which is based off of the USDA cheapest meal plan from the early 60s, yet adjusted for inflation, and then multiplying that number by 3 to account for other household expenses. The threshold operates by household, so it factors in family size and the number of children living in the household. If a family's income falls under this set threshold, then they are considered to be in poverty. A person's income, according to the OPM, is based on the amount of cash he or she takes home before any taxes are taken out and before benefits are added back in, for example, Social Security, unemployment, disability, etc. This measurement strictly calculates quantitative data.
The supplemental poverty measure functions by setting an alternative poverty threshold to the OPM and is arguably a more accurate depiction of the poverty line. The supplemental poverty measure, according to its definition, factors income just like the OPM, but additionally factors in-kind benefits, taxes, work-related transportation, child care costs, medical out-of-pocket expenses, and other additional expenses it deems essential. The threshold is set not according to the FDA food plan, but according to what people are actually spending on food, clothing, shelter, and utilities. According to Kathleen Short and the Research Supplemental Poverty Measure of 2010, the SPM more accurately depicts the poverty line, and the SPM threshold would classify more people as poor.
While the SPM is definitely an improvement from the OPM, it still fails to include many relative aspects of measuring poverty, which we would want to include in the updated version. The SPM family unit is vastly advanced from the previous one, but the U.S. Census Bureau tells us that the SPM implies assumptions that members of that unit share income or resources with one another. So, a family unit, according to the SPM, may not accurately describe a group of people who live together. For example, when people out of college share an apartment, they may not pool together their income or other resources for the family unit in the apartment. They may share bills like utilities, cable, electric, and water, or some groceries, but overall, each member of the unit lives a completely different life that is not accounted for by the SPM. We would now specify within a family unit if all resources are being pooled together, or is each person an independent, or even maybe only one of the individuals is independent of the family unit while still living in the same household. Another problem with the SPM is that they do not include insurance payments, except for the cost of medical care and health insurance premiums. However, car insurance, homeowners insurance, life insurance, and flood insurance are common payments, yet may not be deemed completely necessary by SPM standards. However, sometimes it is necessary for individuals to obtain other insurances besides only health, so the SPM needs to account for those.
The SPM still is only a quantitative measure, and poverty is defined by more than just resource deficiency. Resources do not fully grasp the complexities of poverty. Human capabilities allow us to see the differences in accessing the opportunities that give us these resources. Amartya Sen defines capability and the quality of life as alternative combinations of things a person is able to do or be. A person should be free to pick and choose their beings and doings. If a person lacks this freedom, he or she would be considered living in poverty. For example, two different people could be going hungry. However, one is fasting by choice, while the other is simply lacking food. Resource-wise, they are both poor, but capabilities-wise, the person fasting has the choice to eat or not to eat, while the starving person has no choice and is therefore capability poor.
Measuring human capability can be extremely difficult because the measurement is not quantitative but qualitative. In order to try and make a capabilities threshold, we can start by looking at Nussbaum's list of 10 central capabilities. They are life, bodily health, bodily integrity, senses, imagination and thought, emotions, practical reason, affiliation, other species, play, and control over one's environment, political and material. This list of 10 items is a list of freedoms, if you will, that every individual should have secured by the means of government. If an individual cannot secure all 10 of these freedoms, then they are capability poor. Being above the capabilities threshold is just as important as being above the monetary threshold, because without the freedom and the opportunity to choose, resources will not be as valuable.
In conclusion, we deem the OPM as obsolete because the SPM is essentially the same type of threshold as the OPM, just a more accurate version since it is based on relative standards of living. The SPM also factors necessary income deductions that the OPM does not. However, the SPM still does not factor human capabilities as a part of its poverty threshold. Capability poverty should be acknowledged just as much, if not more, than resource poverty, because even if someone falls above the resource poverty line, as indicated by the SPM, their resources could be of little to no value when he or she is below the capabilities threshold. This is why we also need a capabilities threshold that would be based on Nussbaum's 10 central capabilities in order to accurately measure poverty in our country.